250 years ago, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, whose full name, he was Jewish, so his full name might have been like Christowitz, but God rose him from the dead on a holiday we now call Easter. Not a lot of people know that, but it's called Easter. It's when Jesus and the 2 Corinthians met the Easter bunny and came back from the dead. It's a beautiful story. Very important for the Christians like me. And I have decided, I'm announcing today, we are going to bring back the economy on Easter Sunday. Because God, who, to be honest, is, he's a good God. He's done some strong things. Let's be honest, his record is not so great though. He brought one guy back on Easter Sunday, and it was his son, so it was kind of biased. But we're going to bring back the entire economy on Easter Sunday. And at that point, I think basically I'm better than God. So when we do it, we're going to do it toughly. We're going to do it with great compassion, great strength, tremendous strength, and also toughness. Easter Sunday, we're going to put it on pay-per-view. God versus Trump. Who brings back more people on Easter Sunday? We're doing it. I'm going to fire Fauci probably on Good Friday, and they call it Great Friday for Trump. And that's it. So let's do it. Let's get perfect health. Let's get back to work. Jesus Christ, not as good as Trump.
That is comedian J.L. Cauvin, who I've been trying to make famous for years, and now he is. Over 2 million views on that clip on Twitter. Follow him at J.L. Cauvin. This is Stand Up, and I am Pete Dominic. Welcome to episode 70, everybody, and thank you very much for joining me here on the podcast and for your support on Patreon with a paid subscription. Almost 500 people there. This is Pandemic Parenting Part 2 coming up. 3 great guests are going to join me, giving me and you advice on how to handle being quarantined with our kids, how to get them through this. Had really good conversations with these 3 guests, and I really am looking forward to sharing this with you. But I want to go back to yesterday, well, what was it, last night, I guess, when I was absolutely outraged, like many of you were, about this terrible idea that the president and others are floating, that we got to get back to work, and the president's stupid arbitrary date of Easter. I posted last night on Twitter and Facebook, just want to share with you here on the podcast. It was like 11:30 at night, and I wrote, I'm lying in bed, absolutely outraged by this horrifically unethical, evil, and stupid, unworkable idea that my parents should have to die a pretty awful death because you want to, quote, save the economy. And by the way, that's not even a thing. It won't save the economy. It won't even be the elderly, by the way. If you trust Trump and that massive asshole Glenn Beck, that dumb fuck governor of Florida, whatever his name is, DeSantis, or that stupid shithead lieutenant governor of Texas, or anyone else that says we have to get back to work to save the economy, then I hope you drink a bottle of the finest COVID-19 available, because you are a shitty person. Sorry, I can't hide my disdain for your mountain of stupid horse shit and completely unbaked ideas. Trickle-down economics is so fucking dumb and such a failure, but it was easy to sell to a rube. And you get tax cuts for the rich. It's a mind-numbing fail, but somehow you thought they deserved it. But this one? This elderly have to sacrifice themselves for the economy idea? No. Now I'm done with you. If you think old people should have to sacrifice their lives for this shitty, corrupt, rigged for the wealthy, late-phase capitalist, environment-killing fucked economy, then I want you to meet my dad, who at 75 will still fuck you up. And I shared this video that I had on yesterday's podcast, the audio. I shared that on Facebook of my dad going off about this stupidity as well. So hopefully you go watch that on Twitter and Facebook. And what else can I tell you? The numbers are going up. You're following the hard news. You probably got it on all day. I will say this. For me, one coping therapy has been growing plants. Starting my garden with seeds. I'm going to post some more videos of that, but every night before I go to bed, I watch YouTube videos from expert gardeners, amateur gardeners. I've got the stand-up Facebook group, Stand Up Garden Club. Go join that if you're into it. It's really helped me find peace. So I hope you'll maybe consider looking into starting seeds and starting a garden, because it's, just one idea. So look into it. And for the love of God, don't watch the news before you go to bed. And if you have any ideas, hobbies, interests, things that are helping you cope and keep your sanity, definitely send them my way and I'll share them here and on social media. All right, let's get to my first guest, Dr. Damon Korb. It's Pandemic Parenting, Part 2. Well, this morning I discovered the work of my next guest. Reached right out to him because he seemed like he's already been on top of this issue, and he is the perfect type of person to talk about how to work with your kids, how to educate yourself during this pandemic. He's been answering a lot of questions. He's a board-certified behavioral and developmental pediatrician. He's the founder of the Center for Developing Minds in Northern California, and he's the author of Raising an Organized Child. Follow him on Twitter at Dr. Korb. That's K-O-R-B. Dr. Damon Korb now joining me. Great to have you. Thank you very much for being here. I know you got to get home for your, 5 kids? You have 5 kids? You're a parenting expert?
5 kids. I've got the street cred to back it up with 5 kids.
Yeah, seriously. What is the age ranges for your kids?
14 to 24.
Wow. And I think you told me before we started recording, 4 of them are right there under your roof right now. 4
of them are here, and they brought one girlfriend with them. And it's been, in some ways wonderful, and other ways a little scary.
Yeah, I'm sure for everybody, but it's got to be good to have you there running the show. So first of all, tell us a little bit about what your organization does. Can I call it a clinic, the Center for Developing Minds?
So we're an interdisciplinary program, which means that I'm a pediatrician. We've got psychologists there, educators, speech pathologists, counselors that work with kids who struggle at school, kids with learning difficulties, attention problems, anxiety, autism, developmental delays.
All right. So on a regular basis, you're dealing with all kinds of different issues and different developmental disabilities like autism, I think you mentioned, and other things. So this pandemic, how much does it change the advice that you're giving to parents and the way that you're treating your patients?
So, what I think is interesting is I don't think it changes my advice at all, other than the things become even more important. So a lot of what I talk about is kids need to be organized. Kids need to have routines. We need to have structure. And now that they're all trapped in your house with you, you really need routines, and you need organization, and you need structure.
How do you design, or what is your advice for us parents to design these routines? I'm seeing all these pictures of people with their whiteboards and their charts and so on. I mean, do you sit down with the kids and let them have ownership, or do you tell them how it's going to be? We're getting up, we're going for a walk, you're going to come home and do school. How does it work?
So it depends on the age of your child. If you have a young child, you're going to take more control. If you have an older child, you want to give them as much control as they can possibly handle, but not too much. And so if you think about what the organizational routines are of a typical day, they get up, they get dressed, they have their meal, they go to school, they move from class to class, they have some breaks in between, they come home, they have a little homework, and then they do an after-school activity. There's a lot of structure in the regular day of a child. And so you have to figure out, how do you emulate that? Because if you throw your child into the deep end and say, just swim, they're going to struggle with all the freedom.
Yeah, I think that's what we've been doing. We haven't really gotten on top of any of it yet. It seems so early in the game, but this is going to be from what I'm hearing, a very long, could be up to 2 months that we're maybe longer.
Yeah, we have no idea.
Maybe a little less. I mean, our insane president said it's all going to be over in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to take a 1 month at a time approach at our house.
Yeah, well, that's good. So now I think, I don't know if it's better to be more flexible and break more rules in terms of, treats, desserts, and diet, as well as screen time, or if we're supposed to be more strict or more consistent. It just seems like I want to let I want to let a lot of the rules get a little bit more flexible during this time, because otherwise I feel like we're all going to go crazy. Give them something to look forward to. Tell me I'm wrong.
You're kind of wrong. Life it's about expectations. And if our expectations aren't met, our behavior declines. We struggle when our expectations aren't met. So if you set the expectation that it's dessert and candy every day, and at some point you go, oh, we can't keep doing dessert and candy, you're going to be in big trouble. So it's easier to set the expectation early on what it's going to be, and make sure in those expectations, we're going to have time for creativity, and we're going to have free time, and we're going to have play, and we're going to get exercise. That's all built in, but set that expectation on what your child needs to achieve when they're home.
All these questions, I realize, they're different answers based on your age, gender, special needs, etc. But one thing that really is shown, my daughters are 12 and 15. So, I'm able to get my work done and do what I need to do. But if you have younger kids and now you're working from home, that's very difficult. How do you communicate and set boundaries for your kids so you can have a schedule to get the things that you need to done? So
let's go age by age. Let's start with the infants and toddlers. So infants and toddlers, they need a great deal of support and just watching to make sure they're safe. And parents need to be realistic about what their expectations are of an infant and a toddler. If you have a child who's 2, 3, 4 years old, they're probably not going to occupy themselves more than 15 minutes at a time. So what I recommend for young kids is stations. Stations become really important. So this is the part of the room where your stuffed animals go, and this is the part of your room where you keep your balls, and this is the part of the room where we do messy play, and this is the part of the room where we eat. And you think about rotating your child from station to station before they get bored. You move them from one to the next so that you may not get 15 or 30 minutes of uninterrupted, but you can make that interruption as brief as possible if you're proactive. The other thing I do with young kids is, when kids play with each other and they're 3 years old, they play in parallel. They like to play next to each other, and they kind of look over and see what the other one's doing. It's not very interactive when you're 3. Sit down and do your work next to your child and work in parallel with your child. And every once in a while, pay her a compliment. Say, wow, that looks really great. Oh my gosh, what are you making? I wish I could do that. And those kind of things extend your time on keeping them on a certain activity.
That's really good advice, unless you're a welder.
Unless you're a welder.
What about, are you going to give me some other ages as well?
As you get older, you want to have more options. Kids, when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like to have more control. So within your routine, build options. So when we're talking about cognitive activities that they could be doing, sit down with them and make lists of all the kind of interesting things you can do. You can take Google Earth tours of national parks. You could read a book. You can go tour some museums. There's all kinds of things out there that are available, and you could create those options. So when it's that time in the schedule, they can then pick what would work for them. As long as they're satisfying, this is the cognitive activity time, and this is the free play time. Create those options. And then they get older, when they get to be your daughter's age, you want them to set goals. I like to sit down with my kids at the beginning of this break and just say, hey, we're going to be home for a while. What do we want to accomplish? What are things that we'd like, that we feel good about? If we could say at the end of this month that we've accomplished, have we learned to play guitar? Have we read 2 books? What is it that, have we planted a garden? Have we learned to sew? And then even think about life skills that you can be teaching your kids in this process. How do you wash your car? How do you do laundry? Things that they're going to need someday.
Yeah, or right now, like a survival garden, and learn how to sew masks. That's really good. You've already sat down with the kids, and it sounds like you talked with your kids. I want to definitely do that. Sit down and talk about goals, however long this is going to be. What do you want to accomplish? That's a really, really good suggestion. How do we talk?
It gives them control. When you're setting goals, it's their goal.
Right.
It's not you telling them what to do. You're just there to help them figure out what are the steps to achieve the goal that they want.
Yeah. I love that advice. How about just the conversation that we have with our kids? The advice that I've gotten is be honest, but it's scary, Doc.
So it is scary, but it doesn't have to be scary. The more your anxiety leaks over to them, the more scared they're going to get. And the more confident you are, not only about your health, but also about what you are going to do proactively and what they can do proactively to stay healthy, then they've got a mission and they've got a target. And it's easier for them to stay on course if they know where they're headed. And that course can be, we're going to wash our hands anytime we go outside. We're going to stay away from other people for the next month or however long we need to make sure that this germ passes by us. And then when you're talking to kids, the information you give them really needs to be at their level. So what you say to your 13-year-old is going to be very different than a 4-year-old. A 4-year-old is going to have questions, and they will have heard stuff from the TV, or they've heard stuff from the radio or from other people. So it's important that you talk to them first so that they don't get too much misinformation. And when you start off talking to your kids, no matter what age they are, whether they're 4 or they're 14, you start off by just finding out what they know. Because the first thing you want to do is you want to clear up any misconceptions that they have.
That's great. Yeah. What have you heard so far about what this is? Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of rumors out there that are not true. And like you said, they're being spread from the top. And so we need to make sure that we really call out what's true and what's not true. And then
everybody just drink some chlorine and you'll be fine. Yeah. I mean, it's even crazier. Yeah, when the president of the United States is starting them. And then what? Sorry.
Well, and then what you do is you explain things at their level. So for little kids, you just very concrete. There's a bad bug out there. It's making some people really sick. What the doctors who are working on this have told us is that if we wash our hands and we stay away from other people, it'll allow us to stay safe. And that's what we're going to do. So now they've learned things that they can proactively do. We've put a box around the problem. We've been honest about it, and then your child will move on. For a teenager, they're going to have more questions. And if you don't know all the answers, you sit down and you say, "Let's look it up. Let's figure out what's truthful. How do you go through data that's on the internet to see what is real and what are reliable sources?"
Yeah, if you learn it on TikTok, it's probably not the best place. What is there any way for you to predict the kind of impact that this pandemic and this quarantine is going to have on children, much less us? Is there any way to, or is it even important to try to understand that at this point?
So, you're asking a question that's a little over my pay level, but I'm going to give you a couple different things to think about. First is, for some families, this could be a great opportunity for people to connect with each other, to think about what's important, and they could come out of this really strong. For other families, there's going to be loss, and those families are going to come out of this very differently than the families that don't have those experiences. And then I think there's a whole bunch of cultural things that we're learning. I'm seeing patients over telehealth now, and it's working. And I never thought it would be this easy to do it, but it really works. And kids are learning. My kids are doing homeschooling now through the web, and it seems to be working. And so we may have to, as a society, or may get to as a society, think of ways that we can evolve and become more effective and more efficient based on what we're learning through this process.
What else is there that you've been getting? I know you've been doing a lot of different panels and workshops on this and talking to a lot of parents. Is there a question that you're getting a lot, something I haven't asked, or anything else here at the end that you want to offer?
I'd hope we don't end on this note, but because this is a darker note, but anytime families are stressed, anytime money is tight, we see domestic violence go up. And I think it's really, really important for people to think about locking up their guns right now and finding outlets to deal with their stress, because the last thing we want is to hurt somebody we care about.
Well, that is a dark note to end on, so I'll switch and end on something happier, but it's a really very good point. I've done a lot of work on domestic abuse, and I've heard that as well. So that's an awesome, awesome point. What is your son, a ping pong ball expert or something? He's a YouTube star. I'm looking through your Twitter feed. He has
quite a few followers on Instagram who follow his trick shots. He's got some real amazing ping pong skills, and it's all legit. He can beat you with the back of his cell phone with no difficulty. That
is awesome. Can you give out his Instagram publicly?
He's Kevin Korb, and just Kevin Korb on Instagram.
Kevin Korb?
I've got my people background checking it real quickly. Is that what you're checking? Yeah, they're working on it. Kevin A. Korb.
Kevin A. Korb.
Yes.
Well, that I'm going to go watch that and watch your son's talent. And I really appreciate, there he is. And I really appreciate your time today and your expertise and sharing it with our audience. It's a very important public service. And thank you so much, Dr. Korb. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for doing this. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help out.
Will do.
All right.
All right.
Good day.
All right, Anna. Good day to you, Dr. Korb. Thank you very much for joining me. That was awesome. Very smart guy, Dr. Damon Korb. Follow him on Twitter at Dr. Korb. That's DRKORB. And his organization is at Dev Minds, DEVMINDS. His book is Organized Child. All right, let's move it right along with my next guest. I have 3 guests here on Pandemic Parenting Part 2. She's the founder and CEO of Bloom Together. That's bloomtogether.org. Kimberly Bierbrauer is out in Colorado, and we had a really great conversation. Very thoughtful, sensitive, caring, and empathic woman. I really enjoyed this conversation with Kimberly Bierbrauer, and I think you will as well. Okay, joining me now, another really smart person who answered the call, and I'm really glad to have her. She is a Denver area speech language pathologist. She has her own organization. She consults with works with families who have ADHD children. She's also works with people who have traumatic brain injury. She has a great organization, bloomtogether.org, and I should say that Kimberly Bierbrauer, who is now joining me, also has 3 boys and is married to an orthopedic surgeon who is only doing, emergency surgeries. Kim, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So first of all, just tell us a little bit about your home right now. We're going to talk about your work mostly, but right now you're in your Golden, Colorado home with your 3 boys. What ages?
Yeah, I am at home with my boys. They are 7, 10, and 13.
Now, on the record, which is your favorite?
I tell them all they're my favorite. It's one of those phrases that really kind of gets to them.
My dad did that with my brother and I.
I know, it's kind of fun. I have to have a little fun, but my 2 pugs are my favorite by far.
Oh, it also has the 2 dogs, 2 pugs, nonetheless. Okay, so you are at home. You are what? How isolated are you there in Colorado? What is the current guidance, and what are you guys? How are you guys handling it in terms of your own rules at home? You're all staying home. What's the deal?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We are doing a really good job of staying at home. We are taking some walks. We are very lucky to be in an area where, even though we're 10 miles outside of Denver, the neighborhood I live in particular is pretty rural in Golden. So a lot of space to take some walks and expend some energy for these boys. So biking, hiking, and running.
So, yeah, I mean, you think of boys and you stereotype about energy. And, I don't know, I always think the word rambunctious and horsing around is what I heard a lot. Stop being that. But we were outside all the time growing up. How much have things changed for your boys in their routine? They're out of school?
They are out of school. I have to say our school district, Jeffco, has done an amazing job. Each kid has a Chromebook. So they went 1-to-1 in the beginning of the year. Which now in hindsight was a pretty smart decision. So every school district is at home with online learning. Yeah, so right now, though, I should say our school district is on spring break. We started spring break today. So we're not learning this week, but last week and next week, back to online learning. And that will help create some schedule, right? Some predictability for our house.
Yeah, and that's where I think we should probably pick up, because that's your professional guidance for families. Kimberly Bierbrauer is an occupational therapist or speech language pathologist. So your first piece of advice is schedule. Is that the first, second, and third piece of advice, or am I going too far?
It's definitely one of something I advocate for. I would say right now, before we create a schedule, is to find some calm and connection in our home. I think a lot has been thrown at us, but especially our kiddos. So I think almost before we can talk about the schedules, it's about finding that connection with our kiddos and that calm so that we can think. We can only think when our brains are calm.
Well,
and then
that kind of talk works really well for my wife. Explain calm and connection in more specific terms. What does it mean to, what are you saying?
Yeah, thanks. Well, that is the foundation of our homes, I think. I think before we can build on anything else, we have to be calm first. So before we communicate with our kids, before we do the schedules, we have to have access to the thinking part of our brain. And the only way to access that part of our brain is for our brain to stay calm. You know, some of us as parents, we might have noticed that emotions might be running a little bit high in our houses right now because it's things. So that means our brains might shut down and we might be making decisions more based from emotions versus thinking, right? And so if we can stay calm and think, then we can start to, let's say, for example, create what we want our house to look like, a schedule with our kids, thinking calmly, right? Taking one step at a time. But we have to find that calm first so we can think. Otherwise, I'm a little worried that we're making some decisions based on emotions, right? Like an example like that might be if we see some emotions from our kids, some tantrums, some yelling, some screaming, some slamming of doors. I'm worried that we might throw some consequences at them, right? We might kind of jump to those consequences, whereas I would love for us to take a step back and just calm down first. Where we have those conversations.
So hard to do, but I think that all sounds like really good advice. And I'm, of course, thinking about myself the whole time. Do you think that when it comes time to create the schedule, is that something that you sit down with your kids to get their input on and not be so much of an authoritarian by either showing them the new schedule? Here it is, everybody. This is what you're going to do. You get up, you do push-ups, and wash your hands 15 times versus you sit down with them and say, how do you think the schedule should work? How much time do you think you should exercise? When do you want to eat? When do you want to go to bed, wake up? Giving them kind of ownership over it, I feel like it's probably better.
You could probably see my face light up when you said that. Because while I think it might be tempting to want to just do it for them, I mean, in some ways, if you're being honest, it's easier, right? In that moment, it takes less time. But I think if we can take that time on the front end to have them, to collaborate with them and help them be part of the solution, that's where you gain, again, that connection and that trust, right? So we can start to figure this out together. So you're exactly right that if sitting down with them and saying, hey, I'm thinking today we can start to, what would you like this day to look like? Where can we start? Kids get excited, right? Who doesn't? By wanting to be part of solving that problem.
My daughter, my 15-year-old, will be like, I want to watch as many Grey's Anatomy episodes as I can in one day. I don't even want to eat or bathe. I just want to watch Grey's Anatomy. How does that sound? Okay, so here's my next question, Kim. I'm thinking about sitting the girls down. My daughters, again, are 15 and 12. In having a conversation with them about what is happening. And I don't want to do that for two reasons. And I haven't yet. One, I don't want to scare them. And two, I don't know exactly what to say, honestly. And three, my biggest problem is I don't know what this is. I don't know how to answer their questions. Maybe for the first time in my life, I think of this phrase one day at a time, and it's always felt cliched. I get what people mean by it, and it works for mental health. But now I feel like one day at a time means more than it ever meant before, because you don't know what tomorrow brings. And so when my daughters ask about how long is this going to go on, it just seems like the most typical, obvious question. My answer is going to be, I have no idea how long we're going to have to stay in our house and lawn and community, basically, without and be 6 feet from other people. I don't know. So do I have that conversation? And if I do, what do I say? And how do I answer those questions? I'm really struggling with that.
Okay, that's another great question. And I'm hearing that question a lot from people. So I'm glad you're asking it for other people. I think the greatest thing we can do right now is have empathy for our kiddos, because you're right, there's a lot of unknowns right now, but empathy is the greatest human regulator. So it's the greatest way, again, to find that calm, right? For our kids to know that we're listening to them. And two ways we can do that. And again, you have to stay listening, right? So it's that reassurance piece, saying, I hear you right now. You sound scared. tell me more. Right. So it's the reassurance and that reflection piece are two major components of empathy. So our kids know that we're validating their concerns. And so that means, again, circling back to what I said in the beginning, not jumping to want to solve their problems. Because like you said, we can't right now, right? Like, I wish I could solve this for you, but we're here to listen to them and reflect on what they're saying.
Yeah, I think that's awesome advice. Reminds me of the most important parenting book I think I ever read, at least that worked for me. Dr. Chaim Ganat's Between Parent and Child. Yeah, and people hearing that kind of advice from you might be like, I don't need to validate their feelings. Nobody validated my feelings. It's like, listen, the question is, do you want parenting to work? Do you want your goals to be met? It's not what worked for you. This is what we have a lot of research and practice showing, that if you tell a kid that they're not alone in their feelings, they almost, not always, but they often will just go, oh, I feel so much better. Because when you're a child, you feel like you're the only one who has ever gone through this experience, which is not the case. So validating their feelings calms them. And that's what we want. We want them to be calm. How am I doing?
You could probably see my face light up when you said that. Because while I think it might be tempting to want to just do it for them, I mean, in some ways, if you're being honest, it's easier, right? In that moment, it takes less time. But I think if we can take that time on the front end to have them, to collaborate with them and help them be part of the solution, that's where you gain, again, that connection and that trust, right? So we can start to figure this out together. So you're exactly right that if sitting down with them and saying, hey, I'm thinking today we can start to, what would you like this day to look like? Where can we start? Kids get excited, right? Who doesn't, by wanting to be part of solving that problem?
Yeah, there you go. So, okay. As this goes on, I feel like we're going to learn more and learning from each other and solutions that our community are offering. What advice do you have for people to for parents, especially, have an ongoing conversation about how they are dealing with it, as I said, one day at a time? Are there any networks? Are there any organizations? Are there any best practices that you've heard set up that we could all individually set up or create online, et cetera?
I would almost put that question back on parents and us and ask about if they've been in moments like this before, who have they gone to? Like, so if you closed your eyes and thought about, okay, when I'm having a hard time, who do I go to? I would stick with that person, because this is where that trust and connection becomes pretty vital. Right.
What other advice you have about, what people are going through, or what other questions, Kim, are you getting from other parents and friends about how to deal with your kids or yourself as a parent or as an individual, as an adult right now? Is there any other parting words or advice you have?
I think one thing we can do, parents are asking me how, if they are going to create that connection and notice things in their kids and trying to encourage them, how do they do that? So another piece of advice might be, when you are praising your child at home, again, because it's such an amazing tool we have at our fingertips, right? So if you're going to praise your kids and notice what they're doing, be as specific as possible. So notice and nurture. So an example, if I have time to give that, is just say, hey, thank you so much for waiting while I was on that phone call. It really helps me finish my work. And now I have time to hear what you're saying. So being as specific as possible, nurture and notice what they're doing, because there's so much power in praise. And that's how we continue to build those connections. And try, if you have to leave the room for a few minutes, right, to find your calm, be willing to do that, right? Just be willing to leave so that we can avoid climbing the bat, we say. And just coming back together, taking a break. So if you feel that stress building in your home and all you're doing is climbing that bat, be willing to say, hey, you seem frustrated. I seem frustrated. Let's go take a break. I'm going to come back in a few minutes. Or another thing, that's, if you can't go outside right now, let's play a game. So why don't we just play a few minutes of Connect 4?
Connect 4?
Yeah.
What is it, 1982? Are you introducing your children to Connect 4?
We have Connect 4. We have Uno.
They like it, Connect 4, your boys?
Love it.
That's hilarious.
It's a nice little game to kind of build back that connection.
Kim, it's so great talking to you, and I'm going to keep in touch with you on Twitter, and folks should check out your website, bloomtogether.org, and can I give out your Twitter as well? Or is that personal?
Yeah, it's their funeral, but sure.
Sure. That is at running_in_co. Are you getting out and running during this time?
I'm not giving that up. Exactly. It's mental health, right? Find that calm. What's a way to calm yourself down? So running is
cardio.
being a better parent. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You're keeping 6 feet distance on the trail?
Of course. Always.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you.
All right, that is Kim Bierbrauer of Bloom Together, and my final guest of this episode. I started the first episode of Pandemic Parenting. It's a two-parter, everybody, 2 episodes ago with my good friend Eric Siegel, and so I wanted to end this one with another good friend. Like me, she's not necessarily a parenting expert, but like me, she's a very dedicated parent. And she happens to be a very close personal friend of mine who I've gotten to know over the past few years really well. And I just thought it would be interesting to throw in another conversation of me talking to another friend, just kind of commiserating, talk about how we're dealing with this and how we're coping. I love Monica Olsen, and I think that you're going to love eavesdropping on our conversation right now. All right, now joining me is another really good friend of mine, personal friend of mine, and she is the marketing director, the CMO at Serenbe, which you may have heard me talk about, this amazing sustainable community right outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And I've been there and stayed there and have a lot of friends there. And Monica Olsen is the marketing director at Serenbe. And like everybody else, they've seen, well, pretty much everything gets canceled, right, Monica? Like, didn't you say you're just canceling month after month of events? Depressing as hell.
Yes. Our DNA here at Serenbe, we connect people together. We bring them together, which we can't do anymore. And then I guess the other side is we connect them to nature. So we can still do that. But basically, we've had to cancel everything for April and probably everything for May. Trying to be good stewards.
But you still connect all the people that are living together in terms of just their homes. Like it's still a walking community. What rules have changed? Like it's the ideal community, at least for me and a lot of other people. So how much has the kind of social interaction changed from before and after? Because you guys were always out there walking and getting around by foot. Have you now? Is it just more distance?
Yeah, more distance. People are still out and about. The community is set up very walkable. Everybody has a porch. A lot of people have golf carts and bikes. People are sort of engaging more, but obviously from a distance, people love to get together here. So I walked up to one of the neighborhoods just on my own, just to get out the other day. And there was 2 couples on 2 porches that are, probably 20 feet apart having a cocktail party. The 2 of them, just 2 couples, so people are still, tell me.
What other ideas are people like, have you observed in terms of behavior? Because we don't have to be experts to have this conversation, just to sharing ideas like that.
Yeah, some cute things that people are doing. They'll do sort of, obviously everybody's doing virtual cocktail parties on Zoom, but they've also put out, we have like a private Facebook page that's secret, for our neighborhood. And it'll be like 5:00, everybody come on your porch with a cocktail. And so you can kind of talk to people across or the street, or they'll be walking down on the sidewalk at a distance. And so that's happened a couple times. Some of the moms have done, one of the neighborhoods is called Motto, and she put on the Facebook page, hey, come see the Motto Fairy. The Motto Fairy might write you a note. If you leave a note for the Motto Fairy behind our house, she might write you a note back. So the Motto Fairy, the Motto Fairy has come out. Another mom and her kids were painting rocks and hiding them all throughout the neighborhood. And so you could sort of do your own scavenger hunt solo. So that's been kind of cute. My kids are 13 and 15, so they're not sort of into the Motto Fairy or the painted rocks. They really, all they want to do is be on the games, the virtual games all day. So that's been really trying to get them outside, whether that's to walk the dog or drive the golf cart or, but they can't really see their friends.
Right.
If they do, I guess they can wave to them across the street. But.
So you have two sons, they're 13 and 15, and your husband has been homeschooling the younger one for a little while now. So that's interesting. So at least he knows a little bit about that. But how are they dealing, and how are you dealing with them? What's it been like? What do you have you sat them down and had the conversation about what this is? That's one thing we haven't done.
No, I mean, they're pretty aware. They're online themselves, so they're reading the news, or my older one's on Reddit a lot, which is interesting. So they're pretty aware what's going on, and they don't seem to be too fazed by it. I think that the biggest thing is not being able to hang out with their friends in person. But again, the older one really does a lot of stuff in virtual reality and VR. He has like a game show and is a moderator for a lot of things. So a lot of his friends are virtuals, which is interesting, right? Like for you and I as kids, I barely had I didn't even have my own phone. So I had to go, beg my parents to make a phone call. These kids, they're texting their friends. Right. They're playing games when they can.
What games do they play? Video games, like where they're all on the same game, like Fortnite? My daughters are playing Fortnite like crazy. They had quit for a year, and my younger one never played. Now she's playing. I guess Fortnite's back.
Yeah, Fortnite's back, I guess. Sometimes Minecraft. The younger one just got something that starts with animals, a game that he saved money up, and so he just got that. Again, the older one does a lot of VR, a lot of VR games with his friends. And again, we try and get them, we've always had game time limitations. And so how do you enforce that even more now? Because they really can't do much, right?
Do you enforce it less?
Well,
I mean,
I can go either way with that.
Well, the question I feel like for a lot of parents right now is, do you throw a lot of the rules out in terms of sugary, snacks, drinks, desserts, as well as screen time, because we're all going to lose our minds being cooped up in our homes. So whatever it takes in an ideal situation, of course, we'd have these limits. Or, maybe the other extreme is we all become survivalists. I mean, I'm trying to get the girls to figure out how to plant seeds and learn new things. We have a nice little yard so they can get outside. So I'm not sure what's right or wrong, man.
I don't think there is a right or wrong at this point. I think every parent has to fend for themselves, and I celebrate all of them that get...
I think you win if you keep your family members from eating each other.
I think you win if you get through the end of the day without drinking.
I don't know that that's a game I want to play. I'm definitely worried about running out of alcohol, and I've definitely been drinking more than I have even through my darkness. I never went to it for those reasons, and I guess now it's just like, I don't know. I'm definitely drinking more is all I'm saying.
It's like boredom, or you're getting invited to all these cocktail parties online. It's super strange.
That's funny. I was on the Zoom thing the other night with a bunch of listeners, and I actually did drink a little more than I normally would because I felt like I was out with friends and I was having so much fun. I was like, let me get a little buzz on. I was like, I was 20 again, but it was on Zoom. That's happening. And I'm 44.
I just got invited to a 6 p.m. one on Wednesday with a bunch of the Serenbe folk. So I don't know. I think that everybody still wants to connect. How do you connect people? One thing that was cute that's been happening that I can't get my kids engaged in, but I've been watching is Serenbe's doing Serenbe. And they're featuring like our bookstore owners talked about their favorite books. Our farmers talked about what they were planting. Art Farm talked about artists. So I think that's pretty cute. There's a woman in one of our neighborhoods who really spearheaded that. I think that's cool. Like
I went right to polyamory on Serenbe.
No.
Summer sharing. The world's gonna end. You might as well fuck my husband.
No, we're not doing that here.
Speaking of your husband, I have a lot of admiration for him. I think he's a really, really smart guy. Is there anything you can tell me that Jeff is doing to keep sane, or anything that he's even saying to keep things calm? He seems like a highly intelligent and he seems like very calm. Like I'd want to be in the foxhole with him, I think.
So when we first found out that our older son didn't have school anymore, and he's doing online virtual, and so I have to wake him up every morning. He missed biology the other day because I forgot to wake him up at 9:00 because I thought he just had to get stuff done anyway. But my husband,
can you come in late to your online class? Like, oh, sorry, everybody.
No, he got a whatever demerit for not being in biology that day because I didn't wake him up. And so he is very excited because he has been redoing our bathroom, and mind you, he doesn't. But he's never done a tiled bathroom. He's tiling our entire bathroom.
Highly intelligent. He can teach himself to do anything.
A lot of YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So he's been doing that. He's cleaning up the garden, and we're going to plant. We have a plant sale coming up, so we're going to plant a garden. And he's been running, and so I think he's having his best life. He was already homeschooling. He was already homeschooling at home.
I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. I think I might be as well. I like being home. I like being home. I like when my family is home. Yeah. I'm terrified about everything, no doubt about it. But like, I'm not having a really difficult time adjusting because I have a billion projects going, a ton of work, and I just am doing my best to keep busy.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the outdoor gym I built. You said it was, what did you say? It was odd. I think odd.
Hey, but you got to do what you got to do. I really would love, there's so many cute, there's a really amazing artist, Wendy McNaughton. I think I'm saying her name right. She's every day at 1:00, she's doing a half an hour on how to draw.
Ooh, I like it.
Like
That's
I'm
great.
trying to get my kids to do that. And they're like, oh, Mom.
Well, what are you doing?
They can't stand that.
What are you doing?
I'm working.
You're just doing work.
I'm working.
Canceling to do.
Well, I'm just everything. It's like COVID email. Everything is. It's just reactionary. Trying to be the best we can, assuring everybody, trying to keep the things we can afloat while we're having this time period. And then at night, I bought a couple books, thinking I'd read them. I can't even watch like a subtitled movie. I need pure, just nothingness. True Detective is what I'm watching, which is horrifying and good.
Oh, when you say pure nothing, in terms of your entertainment choice, you need to not think, you need to fry the brain. I get it.
Yes, I just need to fry.
All right, let me ask you about food. What are you getting creative at all with meals? And what about, do you sit down together for meals? If so, when? What are you eating?
Strangely enough, we should, right? We should be sitting down to dinner more than we have. And we haven't. We're cooking more. We're more focused on our cooking, or like I'm going up to the farm and getting whatever's coming off the farm. That day they do a little a drive-through farm stand. You can drive through the farm to pick it up for social distancing. And so trying to be more thoughtful about that. But the kids have been baking. My 15-year-old loves to bake. So I'll come out of my little corner office here in my bedroom and he'll have made cookies or pancakes or so. I don't know. We may be gaining weight.
Everybody's either going to gain weight or lose weight.
I think we're all going to gain weight.
Although maybe, exercise is something that I'm hoping a lot of people will discover if they haven't already. And, it's a matter of time. But you got to do, it's such a cardio is really good for anxiety. And I don't know, just trying to stay. I feel like I'm not eating enough.
I feel like I'm not eating enough. I've actually lost weight since this has happened. I think I just have been so distracted, but I'm trying to get out and walk in the woods once a day, or at least because I just need to have that moment. I miss people. I need social, but I also need quiet. I think it's going to be interesting once we get past, and I don't know if we get past breaking news, in another week or so. What do we end up doing? Will we start doing the yoga class online or training for that marathon that may or may not ever happen? I feel like I'm just in this huge do. Yeah. I definitely have not thought about what I think that's probably do for best. Myself.
Well, you got to take care. You got to put your mask on first, Monica. You're so busy taking care of all of the rest of us.
Oh, I know.
We need you to take care of you. What is the weirdest or most unique social interaction you have had? Have you tried any new apps or communicated in a way? You're doing an interview with me right now. That's cool.
I am. That's interesting. Yeah. I guess I'd never heard of Zoom 2 weeks ago. Had you?
Yep.
Never heard of Zoom.
I've been fiddling with it a little bit, but I learned more in last week than I did in the months prior. Yeah.
My whole team were on Google Hangouts. I sent them home a week and a half ago. We'd never used that. I have friends who worked for huge companies and had used Google Hangouts for years, never used the video. And so now they're like, time to turn on the video. But I think that helps to see people. Like, it's nice seeing you right now and seeing your office, and rather than just a disembodied voice in a
right. Yeah, because there's something to be said just for eye contact and seeing other people and seeing their face. And if you're not going to do that on a daily basis, a regular basis, then something's going to affect you some way or another. So you got to try.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what would, if we didn't have all this technology. Like, we're really very lucky that we do have this technology to stay connected. I'm not sure. Studying what happened in
1918 probably would give you the answer to that, because we had, that was a lot worse, that pandemic, and they didn't have Zoom at all. I mentioned they were just talking about it, like, someday it's too bad that we can't connect with Grandmama on some kind of face space device.
We'll write her a letter and hope she gets it before. That's the thing. Like, I've talked to my parents and my brother who are out in Los Angeles more than I have, you know. Good. I'm talking to them like every other day. So that's great. I mean, maybe we'll all be we'll all be more connected in a different way.
Now
when we'll appreciate what we have. I mean, I think there's the before, seems like a million years ago, but it's like appreciating, be able to go to a restaurant and make a reservation and sit down at a dinner and have somebody take your order, or
we're going to really take that
cocktail parties.
We'll take less for granted. We're going to learn a lot about ourselves, our culture, and our community, and post COVID is going to be something very different than pre-COVID, and we're going to be different people. And I'm so glad that you're in my life. Listen to Monica's podcast, by the way. I meant to plug this at the top. It's Serenbe Stories. Serenbe has their own podcast. Monica hosts it. That's a great thing to do right now, because there's a lot of great episodes that will really stir your mind and get you thinking about some very positive things.
And Pete's going to be on soon. He was going to be in our third season, but I think we may just extend season 2 and keep adding the ones we have in the can.
Well, I'm excited that that's going to air. It was a lot of fun to do. And what else? I don't know. Thanks for talking to me.
I don't know. Board games. That's the other thing. Board games.
Oh, what board games are you playing?
I don't know. I don't have any. I love Rummy Cube, but my kids have these elaborate ones. Rummy Cube? Oh, have you never played Rummy Cube? Or sometimes people call it Rummy Tile?
No.
Oh, it's fabulous. You and the girls would love it.
All right.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I'll look it up.
My kids play these crazy ones that are so elaborate, I don't even understand how to make a move for 30 minutes.
Yeah, me neither. And then I feel real dumb. Yeah. And then they just
me too.
Yeah.
I need to play Old Maid or something.
Old Maid. I wish I had
remember
a deck.
That? Or Go Fish?
Yes, those are my games. Those are my games. They require very little thinking or math.
Maybe we can find an online one we can play together with the two families.
That'd be fun.
Olsen, Dominic.
That'd be fun. I'm also going to help Jeff tile the bathroom online.
I'll send you a photo. He's done a beautiful job.
Very impressed. Tell him I said so. All right, Monica, thank you very much.
Pete, thank you.
All right, that's it. Monica Olsen, thank you. Thanks, Kim Bierbrauer. Thank you, Dr. Damon Korb. That is all for episode 70. Tomorrow, it's Your Health and Wealth with Dr. Arthur Kaplan and Barry Ritholtz, and probably a lot more. So I hope that you're hanging in there. I appreciate you tuning in and listening to the podcast. I hope you're getting some good parenting advice, and I look forward to getting more of it from you. We'll talk to you right here tomorrow. Hang in there, friends, and let me know what you're doing to cope and stay sane in these insane times.